Hi, it's Sarah here from Crafting and Stamping, and I'm back with another quick tip. My tip today involves the emboss resist technique. So what this means is that we're going to emboss a design, in this case some text, onto some paper and heat emboss it, and then we're going to spread ink onto the top of that. It will resist where the embossing is and you'll get a coloured background, but the actual stamped image will stand out. So a few tips for doing this. I've already set this up with my sentiment in the place that I want, and I'm going to use an embossing buddy to just cover this piece. Why we're doing this is because the ink, oil from our hands or from any other sort of materials you've got nearby can attract the bits of embossing powder. So we want to try and make sure that our cardstock or paper is as clean as possible. Now, I've got an embossing buddy from ages ago, but this is actually now part of the Embossing Editions toolkit that you can get here, which includes the embossing buddy. It also includes a tray. I'm just going to use paper for the background. You'll see what happens in a bit. It also includes a craft brush and tweezers. So I'll show you what that's all about in a moment. So I'm going to ink up this with Versamark. And we're wanting to use Versamark because it needs to stay wet and tacky long enough for us to cover with the embossing powder, and a regular ink just doesn't do that. So I'm going to just stamp this, and because it's a bold design, I want to make sure that that is fully inked. It will stick, that is quite normal. So I'm just going to push that back into the corner, fully into the corner, and I'm just going to ink it and stamp it once more to make sure that I've got good coverage. So we'll just keep that nicely tucked into the corner. And I'll just press that. And like I say, it's quite natural for it to stick because it's a tacky ink. So I'm going to move that out of the way. And this is where you would use the tray that's here, but I actually am quite happy to use paper. So I'm using my white emboss powder. This comes in a pack with black and clear. You could use clear, but I actually want to cover over the spots where my sentiment's going to be. So I'm using white, and just pop that down like that. If you've got the tray, then there's a plug on the end and you can just pop your emboss powder back into the pot using that. As I say, I've been doing this for long enough that I can just use paper. You could get some little flecks of your emboss powder that have gone astray, so this is where we use a brush and just sweep up any extra spots. That looks pretty decent. So now I'm going to use the heat tool, so it's going to get a little bit loud. And I like to make sure that the heat tool warms up a bit before putting it on the embossing powder. Once we do get it on the embossing powder, as soon as that embossing powder starts to melt, we need to move it on to the next bit. So you may be able to just see that turning, and as soon as it does, I move on to the next letter and move along. And because this is a big sheet of paper, I don't really need to be holding it with tweezers. I can cut an edge and do it, but the tweezers in the pack are very handy. there we are, and we just want to give that a couple of minutes to dry. You want to make sure that it's not still tacky. And this is where the resist bit comes in. So I'm going to get ready. I've got blending brushes that I'm using, and I'm going to use Shaded Spruce and Parakeet Party. And I'll use the darker one first. And I'm just going to grab myself the sheet that will protect the background. Not that it matters, this is just paper, but just make sure that you're not going to get inks anywhere that really matters. So that should be dry enough now, or cool enough rather. Yeah, that's cooled off. So, and I have, right, the other thing that I need is a little bit of kitchen towel for buffing up. So I'm just going to dab and pick up a bit of the ink and very lightly start swirling it around. Oops. This is where you do need to be a little bit gentle with your paper, and I've gone a bit heavy there. Trying to keep out of your way so that you can see what's happening. And then give it a buff between, and that takes off the ink that's sitting on top of that embossing powder. Like that. So I'm going to switch now to the Parakeet Party. And possibly I could have done with actually letting this get a little bit more of the ink. And I'm just going to swirl this around a little bit over where I've already been. I only want it very light to start. And then I can build it up a little bit. So I'm getting it kind of how I want it on one side, and just blend it out now a little bit. And I'm trying to go in a bit of a circular motion. There we are. And we'll just go a little bit more down here. And again, then taking my paper towel, kitchen towel, and just rubbing off the ink that's sitting on top of the embossing. And so it comes off that foiling as well that we've got in this paper. This is the Silver DSP from Sale-a-bration. And you can start to see it's now coming up a lot better. There we are. So that is our emboss resist technique. Now I would let that ink dry. I'm going to leave it to dry for about an hour. It perhaps won't take that long, or you could heat set it a little bit more, but it can be a bit risky to do that because you don't want to melt the embossing powder back into your paper. We've got it at a nicely embossed point, so heating it further could actually spoil that. So I'd prefer to let that dry naturally. But because we've actually put a reasonable amount of ink on here, I want to let that dry before I assemble my card. So hopefully that's given you some little tips on the embossed resist technique. and a few tips as well just on general embossing in the first place. I hope that helps. Please do subscribe to my channel below to see a quick tip every Friday and a quick card every Monday. I do an online workshop that I then replay and put that on here, and that's on the first Wednesday of every month. So please subscribe and you get to pick those up. Thanks very much for watching.